Morning, good afternoon, good evening. Zimbabwe is a failed state. I keep saying that because it is true. And one of the reasons why is Zimbabwe is a failed state is because we have been stuck with this corrupt, incompetent, and tyrannical ZANU-PF dictatorship for 45 years and counting. People have got to ask, in 45 years, why did you fail to end the ZANU-PF dictatorship? Well, we failed because the people in the late 1990s risked all to elect an opposition whom they entrusted the task of bringing up the democratic changes to end the dictatorship. Unfortunately, the opposition has turned out to be corrupt, incompetent, and utterly useless. Here is one of the leaders, David Coltart. He has been an MP, then he was a senator, and now he is the mayor of Zimbabwe's second biggest city, Bulawayo. Here he is posting on X. Although politically I don't agree with ED's political ideology, on infrastructure arena he has performed. Glassblock dam project getting authorization from government. Hashtag Vision 2030. My only immediate response to that was, we do not give a murderer a hero's medal for helping an old lady cross the street, especially when he did it for the sole purpose of robbing and murdering the old lady. We hang him. And yet here we are. Coltart is giving him a medal. Let's start on the political front. He says he doesn't agree with Mnangagwa's political ideology. One of those ideologies is that Mnangagwa rigged the 2023 elections, blatantly rigged the 2023 elections. SADC and the AU election observers condemned the election process as flawed and illegal. And therefore then, Mnangagwa's regime is illegitimate. I would say one would expect you do not just disagree with such a political ideology. This is an outrage. This is an illegitimate regime. At the present moment, the nation is engaged with a debate because Mnangagwa wants to amend the national constitution so that he and parliament will have the right to postpone elections and extend his mandate beyond the 2028 deadline. He's supposed to serve until 2028, when his two-year maximum term limit comes to an end. This is at the very heart of democracy. The people are the only ones who gives those in public office the power to, to act, the mandate to rule the country. We cannot, and we can ill afford to allow this to happen. What Mnangagwa is proposing here is that the people's mandate, power to elect those in public office for a fixed term. And then the politicians have got to come back to the people so that the people can give them a fresh term, a fresh mandate. He wants to subvert that. He wants the politicians now to have the power to postpone elections and thus extend their mandate. This is an outrage. So for somebody like him, and David Coltart is a lawyer, to merely disagree with ED's political ideology, beggars belief. And in this particular case, is Coltart suggesting that because Mnangagwa is doing well in terms of infrastructure, he is going to fulfill this vision 2030. He should be allowed to stay in power, to extend his mandate to 2030. This is utter nonsense. On the economic front itself, Vision 2030 is supposedly the nation attaining an upper middle income status by the year 2030. That's 5 years from now. At the present moment, Zimbabwe is a failed state, one of the poorest countries in the world. Attaining upper middle income status is not something that can be attained overnight. Nor will building one dam in, I suppose, Coltart's sphere of influence going to transform the people of Bulawayo. Unemployment in Bulawayo, for instance, like the rest of the country, is 80% plus. It's been that for the last 20 years at least. Is the completion of this dam going to suddenly transform the city of Bulawayo so that they now have got clean running water, people have got full employment, the roads do not have potholes, sewage is repaired, etc., etc. That is the life of an upper middle income nation. This is all going to happen in 5 years. This is utter nonsense. What is disappointing here is that people like David Coltart have been participating in these flawed elections, knowing fully well that the process is flawed, that participating will only give ZANU-PF legitimacy. But they've continued to do it out of greed. I'm showing below at the bottom of the screen there a quotation from Coltart's own book, where he admitted that in 2023, the election process in Zimbabwe was so flawed, so illegal, the logical thing to have done was to withdraw. But he and his colleagues did not withdraw. And to put it in his own words, for fear that the other side would participate and win the seats. In other words, they participated out of greed. That is unfortunately the reality in Zimbabwe. Our opposition leaders, while the nation has reached all to elect them to implement democratic reforms, to stop ZANU-PF rigging the elections, they've been participating in these elections out of greed. It is not only Coltart who have picked on this. Here is Margaret Dongo, an opposition leader in her own right. She was formerly with ZANU-PF. She was a freedom fighter. And then after independence, she became an MP, a ZANU-PF MP, and then an independent member of parliament, speaking to this issue of political greed, particularly in the opposition.
You know, politics is not a business. This is what I want to remind most of our MPs and other people.
Do you think they look at it as a business?
Yes, they look at it as a business because they look at it as a business seriously. Because the moment they go, business and employment creation, because if they go to parliament, you are employed, you get a car, you get a stable salary, and you are paid until your term is over. Already you are employed. If you are out, you're out of employment.
If you serve 2 terms, you get a pension?
You get a pension. Then already, this is why people kill in politics. They kill to be in parliament. This is why we have violence in this country, because there is no employment. The only employment which is there is in politics. There is no other outside employment. So for them, a very good example is, look at what happened to CCC, the Triple C party. Have a look. When they lost, when they said they were rigged, what I expected from them, I expected all parliamentarians to say, we are not going to go to participate in a rigged system. And we are not going to sit in a rigged parliament because the elections have been rigged. So all of us were not going to parliament. Imagine what could have happened. We could have gone into new elections. There's no way ZANU-PF was going to rule alone.
You think so?
Yes.
Do they care?
Caring or not caring, the public would have forced them because the majority of the people would want representation in parliament.
What Margaret Dongos is saying there is very true. The opposition have been participating in these flawed elections, knowing fully well that the process is flawed, knowing fully well that by participating, they are only giving ZANU-PF legitimacy. In the 2023 elections, even when SADC and the AU election observers had condemned the process as flawed, the opposition leaders still went ahead and took up their seats, their gravy train seats. David Coltart was one of those MPs who went ahead and took up his seat as an elected councillor of the seat of Bulawayo, even when the election process had been declared that it was flawed. That is what we're talking about here. Like it or not, by taking up their seats, they gave the process legitimacy. It is really disappointing how we keep going round and round in circles. How the opposition that are supposed to be people risked all to elect them into positions of power and authority have instead turned round and have been selling cheaply to the regime. There really is no excuse for this kind of idiotic remark from the opposition. It is idiotic. Zimbabwe is at the present moment facing a serious problem of a dictatorship. As long as the country is stuck in this pariah state, there is no hope of any meaningful development, let alone attaining an upper middle income status. The opposition were elected to dismantle the ZANU-PF dictatorship. The opposition in Zimbabwe, the MDC-CCC, have become the ZANU-PF Team B in all but name. They've been playing for Team A to win and Team A to have legitimacy. And retain, they've managed to secure for themselves a few gravy train seats, and they're quite happy with it. It is not a matter of the opposition leaders merely disagreeing with Mnangagwa's political ideology. What we are talking about here is a lot more profound than merely agreeing or disagreeing. We are dealing here with a corrupt, tyrannical, and oppressive dictatorship that has denied people the fundamental freedoms and rights, including the right to a meaningful vote. And at the present moment, as part of this Vision 2030, they are now threatening to amend the Constitution so that they, the politicians, have the power to extend their mandate to stay in office for as long as they want. Yes, Mnangagwa is talking of extending it from 2028 to 2030. But once that constitution has been amended to give the politicians that power, they are not going to have another referendum to ask people if they can extend it from 2030 to 2033. They already have that power. I repeat, when you're confronted with a murderer whom you know is a murderer, you have established the facts that he helped an old lady cross the streets for the purpose, sole purpose of robbing and murdering the old lady. You do not talk of giving the individual the hero's medal. You hang the medal. Why are we talking of Mnangagwa as performed in the infrastructure arena? He is not accountable to anybody. How much money has been spent in some of these projects? We cannot flatter ourselves that the commissioning of Glassblock dam is going to deliver Vision 2030. It's going to transform Bulawayo into a modern city where the citizens are upper middle income, much less the whole country. So why is David Coltart praising this nonsense? Zimbabwe is a failed state. If we are serious about ending the ZANU-PF dictatorship and getting the country back on a democratic footing, we have to accept that our starting point is to be the corrupt, incompetent, and utterly useless opposition. Many people believe that the opposition will still deliver the democratic changes that the nation has been dying for. The truth of the matter is, they will never deliver it. They had the golden opportunity to implement the reform during the GNU of 2008 to 2018. They failed to implement even one token reform. We cannot talk of removing ZANU-PF without talking of appointing a competent opposition that will do it. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.